after the events outside and inside Old Trafford on Sunday, Manchester United Liverpool, having been postponed, has got to be played, and it is accordingly been rearranged for Thursday the 13th of May at 8 o'clock. When is that? I'll tell you when. 48 hours after their top four clash with Leicester on Tuesday the 11th. So is it right that Manchester United have faced no sanctions at all for what happened at Old Trafford on Sunday? And what can be done to stop the situation happening again next week? We heard from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on this yesterday. He was prepared to go a bit far, but not any further when he spoke about it yesterday. But what he did say, protesters were wrong to take it as far as they did, and he also had a bit of a nip at some members of the media.
Everyone's got a human right to be heard and the voice to be heard, but it has to be peacefully. You know, when you step out of line, when you break into on the pitch, break into dressing rooms, I think that's one step too far. And then when it becomes police matters, it's not really, that's not nice, and it's not been helped by certain individuals. And I have to say that's another part of it. That's your end of it. Not you, Simon, but that's your end of it.
No, the Simon that you referred to wasn't me. Not my Simon, if you like, not our Simon. But Solskjaer was having a bit of a dig at certain individuals, if you like, certain individuals whose contribution in his eyes has not been what would you describe, helpful. Mm-hmm. Is he right to say that?
Yes, I think he is. I would like him to say who he was referring to. I think we can all surmise, because I think there's people that have said things that are not constructive and are not appropriate, and by that I mean Gary Neville. I think some of the things that he said are not right. I think he's gotten carried away of himself and got a little bit too full of some of the bluster that he likes to avail us of. And I think it's right. And that interview went on a lot further. It talked about his relationship with the Glazers and how he had a good relationship with them and how they did care about the football club, and they weren't blind, they weren't deaf, and they did understand that there were certain things that needed to be done. So I listened to that interview in all of its entirety. But I think he's right. I think there's been a culture of hysteria and hyperbole that's been built up that gave some of these Man United fans, if they're indeed fans, and I've seen videos of some of these fans
I've just showed you something
engaging with Gary Neville,
there,
which shaking hands with the fans that are abusing Graham Souness and abusing everyone in earshot, except the ones they don't feel like abusing. And I can't fathom it. But there we are. That's a different discussion entirely.
On my phone, I've just, during the last commercial break, I played Simon. You're all right with me saying this?
Yeah, sure.
And you listened to the whole thing. There is one lout in particular who lets loose at Souness and Carragher.
Yeah.
What is that moron doing inside that stadium on Sunday?
Well,
unchecked, unchallenged, and is now walking the streets.
Well, apparently, according to certain pundits, he's exercising the right that 16 years of frustration have built up in him.
Do me a favour.
So, honestly, with all this in mind, the two questions that we need to come out of this is what should have been done to Manchester United and what prevents the situation happening going forward.
So where are you at with both of those?
Well, and you were right, because I'm very quick to opine and offer an opinion on things, and I sat there prevaricating about because I just felt that this is a very different landscape for the Premier League to navigate, because you've got a climate that's been created out of the furore around the European Super League. On one hand, you've got fans that are being listened to and applauded. On the other hand, you've got a minority that are just dregs. And they are influencing the landscape. And I always felt it was a difficult conundrum. And of course, we've got examples where Burnley, West Ham fans invaded the pitch, stuck a flag in the middle of the pitch, didn't they? Or did something with a corner flag in the middle of that game, or Mark Noble had to intercede or something of that nature. But that game had started, so it was a different protocol that may well have been into play. So
West Ham were fined $100,000 for that.
I understand
in 2019
but
when fans invaded the pitch.
That was in the middle of a game where the fans were inside the stadium, and perhaps the argument was the stewarding should have stopped them from breaking onto the pitch. Right? In this instance, this is not a game that's even gone on. This is a game where fans are not supposed to be inside the stadium because of the COVID-19 protocol and because of everything that's going on. So there are different circumstances. Now, why would you penalise the club for the behaviour of the morons? Right? And I've always had a trouble with this on a variety of subjects. When fans are being abusive, all of a sudden the club are responsible for the fans' behaviour. You know, the argument about fans being racist. Throw them out. The club have got to throw them out. But when you sanction the club after they've thrown fans out for something that you can't control them from doing, I've always found that, okay, what does that help to achieve? But in this instance, I felt it was going to be difficult. That's why I was pontificating. How do you prevent it? Well, I think the Man United fans are going to police themselves because they know that their argument is flawed. Gary Neville's argument is flawed because they had the positive exercise of demonstrating, and they got the European Super League in part because of the fans stopped. The real part is that Munich and PSG pulled out, and Munich didn't want to do it. They are probably the real reasons why this tournament didn't get
but
off the
Simon,
ground.
we've heard from the Manchester United Supporters Trust, who said if they don't get a response by Friday from the Glazers,
Yeah, we did.
we cannot rule out that there'll be more protests like Sunday.
But you also heard from them a distinct softening in the language that they were using about who they would get a response from and what kind of response they expected. You put your best foot forward. Now, I think that with the Arsenals and the Chelseas of the world and the demonstrations that went on there, if Manchester United, one thing that Gary Neville said right was that Manchester United and these big clubs had the right to be the grandfathers of football, and they should be outlawing this European Super League. Then so should their bloody fans when it comes to having protests. They should also be the grandfathers of football and how they operate, and they should be setting a standard.
But it's too
for other
late.
clubs.
We saw what happened on Sunday.
So what we're now saying now is, the argument now is, can it happen again?
Yeah.
And I'm advancing the scenario that I don't think it will, because I think that they've made a mockery of themselves to some extent. They've made a mockery by comparison because the European Super League was stopped in part by peaceful but very vociferous protest. The Chelseas and Arsenals of the world have had their protests, but the Man United protest turned into what it was. And Man United are supposed to be the iconic club amongst all of this.
Of course.
So I think that they're going to police themselves. And I think
but does Sunday go unpunished?
Well, I think it's going to be.
But Simon, look, I mean, what can I throw? Another example, 2015, and I'm not out to get Manchester. I couldn't care less.
Yep.
I'm not out. This isn't a one-man campaign to get them punished. Believe me.
Yeah,
and there was a pile on me the other day in social media, but that's by the by. It didn't bother me one bit. Blackpool were fined 50 grand in 2015 following a protest against their ownership. We all know about that, the Oystons.
Yeah,
and that forced the final match of the season against Huddersfield to be abandoned. This is the same thing.
Let me ask you a question. Right? And
why should Blackpool be fined 50k?
Well, there was a lot going on with Carl at that time, and there'd been interactions with fans, and he'd been accused of abusing a supporter.
Going on Sunday.
I understand that. But do you think, let me put the question to you, because I don't have a definitive answer, that any dispensation should be given for this set of events, given the extraordinary circumstances of the landscape of the country, of the fact that people are coming out of lockdown with very, very outraged and angry outlooks, and also on the backdrop of an absolute revolution around football based upon a bombshell that was dropped on football that fans got really up about on the European Super League? Do you think there should be any dispensation for that, or do you think that the guys on the pitch should be nicked and got their collars felt and they should be the ones that are being sanctioned, or do you think the club are entirely responsible for 150 or 200 people that ran on that pitch and decided to break the law? Do you think the club should be responsible for that?
I don't give them a free pass for doing it just because we're coming out of COVID. That's for sure.
No, fair enough. I'm asking for
that sequence I played you a second ago. We can't transmit that. We can't broadcast that on talkSPORT.
They're trogs. They're the Morlocks.
These individuals, and let me just tell you, elder statesman of the game, how dignified was Souness's response, standing smiling? How dignified was Jamie Carragher,
well, of
standing
course.
smiling? But Simon, you don't want to be in the wrong end of that, and you and I have been.
I have been on many occasions having owned a football club.
But that lout shouldn't have been inside Old Trafford offloading on these guys.
And we're all agreed on that. But how do you make the football club itself culpable for that? Are they culpable because they caused it because of the European Super League? Or are they culpable for the hearts and minds of trogs that belong in a cave?
Whatever is done has to be seen as a deterrent against it happening again.
For whom? But Manchester United, you must be then by saying, by extension, this is entirely Manchester United's fault.
Simon, look what's coming up.
I'm just asking you, is it Man United's fault, Jimbo? Is it Man United's fault? Those fans that broke into the stadium, if it's Man United's fault, if they didn't police properly...
To a large extent, it has to be seen to be.
Then they have to be sanctioned if it's their fault on that basis.
There was a lot of chatter on social media that this was going to happen. There was a realisation around the club.
But what about the police
during the course of Sunday that something was going to kick off?
But what about the police then? Why did the police take an hour to get there? Why didn't the police stop their nonsense at the Lowry Hotel? What about the services that were available to deal with public disorder? Because it was public disorder at the Lowry Hotel. That's not Manchester United's fault. That's their supporters' fault. And I'm not making a case for Man United.
No, I know.
I'm making an argument to suggest this is a very difficult cat to skin.
I understand that. There's an either or here, Simon. Unless something is done it goes unpunished.
No, I don't think so. I think the impact, like you said the other day, and we made this point discussing about these big six owners, right? The big guys, the top guys in football that run the big six.
Yeah.
They've been made to look like a bunch of twerps, right? On the front page of newspapers, and the humiliation factor when John Henry's running around selling 10% of FSG for 500 million quid, and the private equity firm are saying, what are you doing over here, mate? We've bought 10% of this club. What are you doing over here? So the embarrassment factor. So now go forward to Man United. Of all the English clubs, they're the best, aren't they? Their supporters are the best. Their club has the most heritage. They are the most iconic football club. Well, why is it that you are a bunch of turgid wretches are the only people that can't have a protest that doesn't involve fans?
Well,
don't you think that's embarrassing for them?
Let's see what let's see the kind of discussion we have. We're going to head to a break because I'm behind on this. Let's see the kind of discussion you and I are into to having in the coming days, because the Supporters Trust has said if they don't hear from the Glazers by Friday,
protest.
They cannot.
Protest, Jimbo.
Yeah.
Not the kind of scenes. They weren't advocating the kind of scenes that were. If they were advocating the kind of scenes,
let's see how the
fine,
protest
Jim, if they do it again, I think there'll be murders amongst themselves. Oh, there'll be massive
because
explosions.
we now know
even
Man United Liverpool's rearranged for Thursday, the 13th of May, 48 hours after the top four clash with Leicester at Old Trafford on Tuesday, the 11th. So we'll see what happens then.